Hello everyone and welcome. What are the qualities of a sage? Well, first of all, who is a sage? A sage or a jnani is a self-realized being. His identification is with awareness. But awareness has no qualities. So the qualities that we are talking about here are in a relative sense. So please keep that in mind. Okay, the first salient or important feature or quality or characteristic of enlightenment is that the seeker stops seeking. At this point, everything stops and there is a subtle shift in awareness in which the foreground becomes the background and the background becomes the foreground. The ego or mind, the subject, meditating on the God or self, the object, becomes the object, and the God or self, formerly the object, becomes the real subject. And this never changes because it is obtained through the knowledge that what I experience is me, but I am not what I experience. Unlike an experience, the self can never be lost because it is me, the basis of everything, and there is nothing other than it to lose. Gautama Buddha defined enlightenment as the end of suffering, where suffering is caused by the sense of personal ownership or personal doership. So, enlightenment does not suddenly make us immune to pain or make us in control of the universe. It does not mean that everything works as we wish and we will. It is simply the condition of someone abiding in his or her real nature. That's all. No particular experience of special bliss comes with enlightenment, although enlightened people tend to be blissful. Enlightenment means that you know that you are the knower of every conceivable experience. It means that you never confuse what you are experiencing and that the experiencing is you, but you are not the experiencing. Enlightenment is simply the remembrance of hard and fast knowledge that I am whole, complete, ordinary, unchanging, actionless awareness. And when this knowledge is firm, it does not produce a permanently blissful mind. However, this knowledge produces a sense of rock solid confidence in the person, intellectual as well as emotional. The person knows that henceforth he can handle any situation in life without any discomfort. When it is clear that you are the knower of the experience, the craving for pleasant experience, raga or likes, and the aversion for unpleasant experience, dvesha or dislikes, disappears or more precisely becomes non-binding. Remember that a binding desire causes repetitive unconscious behavior. This allows the love to flow continuously to all selves and to all objects. Upon realization, appearance or Ishvara Dvaitam or non-binding duality or projected duality stays, but ignorance, which is Jiva Dvaitam or binding duality or perceived duality, goes or disappears. Concepts stay but the belief that the concepts refer to reality goes. A sage sees both variety, which is illusion, and unity, which is reality, simultaneously at the same time. He sees a table and knows it as a self in a single simultaneous operation. That is the test of knowing. He is fully aware of the differences in the world, yet is aware of the underlying unity. A person who expresses the physical and the spiritual at the same time is a person who is fully enlightened, fully realized. An enlightened being never denies duality, only its reality as matter and mind, which is called realism. Because, like the snake in the twilight rope, it is not actually there. Duality still exists, but the knower knows that they have not got separate existence in reality. The seeing is not altered, not changed, only the knowing. He denies dualism, me and the other. A sage's ego has become the witness, called Sakshi or Aham in Sanskrit. A sage has an intellectual advantage, which is, I know the entire truth of manifestation, as well as an emotional advantage, meaning I depend on Brahman, me, not the world. The flow of life, whatever happens in life, whether pleasure or pain, will continue to unfold, sometimes in line and sometimes out of line with our preferences. A sage is able to enjoy the pleasure in peace without the pleasure being shattered, and bear the pain in peace without the pain being intensified. Life is not set up to work for you, the ego. It is set up to work for life. Life works for you, the ego, when you work for the real you or the totality. So, an enlightened being realizes peace or love in his attitude towards life, not in the flow of life. Life always delivers pain and pleasure as part of the flow of life, which will be registered biologically, and then a body-mind organism will react as designed per its biological preferences. On the other hand, suffering, which is a psychological reaction, is not on the level of flow of life, but always in relationship to our attitude towards the flow of life. A sage realizes this truth and remains peaceful in his attitude in any circumstance. He is neither uncomfortable with himself nor uncomfortable with the other. Sense of personal doership has been completely uprooted. Ahamkara, meaning I as a doer or me-ness, has become ahamta, which is I sense, because he still identifies with his body for a day-to-day living. He has completely surrendered his individual will. He has realized that his will is the same as God's or totality's will. The sage's position is that if enjoyment comes, he accepts it. If it doesn't, he keeps quiet. Even when he is taking pleasure, however, he is not deluded by them, and he regards them as a game he is playing, for he knows their unreality. He does not take them seriously. And there is no coincidence, and nothing happens by accident. Each event and adventure is called to yourself by yourself in order that you might create and experience who you really are and demonstrate it. All true sages or masters or jnanis know this. That is why masters remain unperturbed in the face of the worst experiences of life, as we would define them. This means that an enlightened being or a sage has converted his identification with the ego to an association with the ego. That's it. His doing coincides with the happening. Doing and happening become one. With enlightenment, certain psychological or attitudinal genes and conditioning are dropped. In other words, ignorance or unconscious mind has disappeared, or sense of personal doership has been dropped, leaving the biological genes that came with the birth and some conditioning intact. Cellular memory that was part of the body that came with the birth, programmed at the moment of conception, can never be dropped. So, if a sage has an inclination for sweets or desserts, it will stay. Since the self-knowledge takes place in the subtle body, a mental level, not a physical level, the effects of knowledge or Atma-jnana are derived only at the mental level. Ahamkara, the notion of I as a thinker, doer, or meanness, and mamakara, mineness, are dropped. But asmita, meaning selfness, or I am, or the I sense, has to stay as long as the sage lives in a body for the day-to-day transactions to take place. Since he has already shed his subtle and causal bodies, there is no need for him to take another birth when his gross body sheds. A sage lives physically until the body-mind's prarabdha karma or destiny runs out, and with the full benefits of freedom and complete awareness. Constantly repeating desires called impressions or vasanas or ragas, deshas, or likes and dislikes, or binding. An enlightened being does not need to get rid of all his desires. He just needs to make all of his binding desires non-binding, so that the desires no longer dictate his actions. Desire in purity is not a problem. Desire contaminated by ignorance is the problem. Life now happens to him. Functioning of manifestation is like a dream. He is simply a witness, a sakshi. He is a lucid waker, witnessing all the phenomena in the waking dream, including his body. Attractive and or aversive reactions, raga dveshas, do not arise. If they do, they are simply witnessed as the not self. Love flows continuously to all selves and to all objects. An enlightened being deals any situation with love. He treats everyone as if they are his own children. Remember that a child may be punished if needed. Love is the only law in spirituality. A sage's actions are no longer for happiness, but are out of happiness. Because he is happiness or peace or ananda himself. A sage has the freedom, however, not to attend to the consequences or happenings by refraining from rising of his thinking ego, to get personally involved further and by turning inward. Remember, any beingness act is free act. His identification is with consciousness or love. He understands that actions taking place through all body-mind organisms are not of any individual's actions, but are part of impersonal functioning called Maya. Experience simply goes right through him without any resistance. He reacts biologically in vertical time, but he has no egoic reaction in horizontal time. Similarly, in a sage, a desire can arise, but the sage does not pursue the desire unless it is totality's will. He does not thus identify himself with thoughts, feelings, but simply witnesses them. They get cut off without any further involvement or entanglement or judgment. No fear, no problems attached to them. A sage is in duality, not in realism and are not in dualism. A sage is in duality, not in realism and are not in dualism. He is back in the now like a child. However, if the situation demands, a sage may respond, that is, deliberately act in the interest of totality, without any tint of personal doership. His action is rooted in inaction. Such a person no longer makes decisions based solely on fears and desires. He will start to interpret experience from the point of view of the self or the God or the totality. Therefore, the notion that a sage should never get angry or never pretend to anger is erroneous. He may do so if it is not in his egoic interest. If he sees harm is being done or if it is for the benefit of the others or the world. Did Krishna not urge Arjuna to fight, even to kill? A body part infected with cancer may be removed in the interest of keeping the organ working. Legs infected with disease may be amputated in the interest of keeping an individual alive. A sage will live as he pleases, above codes, but this does not mean that he will do wrong or harm others or cause suffering. For his self-identification with them will prevent this. Masters are those who have chosen only love in every instance, in every moment, in every circumstance. The enlightened man does not criticize or praise men but he does criticize or praise actions. He does not speak ill of persons, but he must condemn or discourage wrong actions and praise or support right actions. The ignorant, however, condemn or slander the persons concerned. For he must set an example and guide people into the paths of right action, which are stages of discipline that will gradually lead them towards reality or Brahman, whereas wrong actions lead them away from Brahman or the reality. An ordinary person does not accept duality of interconnected opposites, and he chooses one of the opposites, which is called dualism. He only wants good, not the bad, beauty, and not ugliness, etc., not realizing that one cannot exist without the other. So, in his judgment, he chooses one against the other for his personal interests. Thus, the individual ends up miserable in dualism, samsara. A sage never chooses good against bad. He simply moves just like a sunflower towards the direction which is that of good, that of love. His nature is love, completeness, ananda, and he has recognized it. What needs to be done in a loving and dharmic way becomes what he wants to do. A realized person will not violate responsibility or dharma because he or she is in harmony with it. If you are in harmony with the world, there is nothing to follow or avoid. The law applies to one who knows a little, but not to children who do not know anything, or the enlightened who knows the essence of everything and so in line with everything or totality. Therefore, total acceptance is peace. Follow the flow of life, but change your attitude towards life. Remember, choosing or judging involves thinking or doing, and that will further entangle you in samsara, the wheel of karma. Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, accept both the polarities, like good and evil, because both are there together. Go with them because they are. Don't choose one against the other. So, who is a true sage or a jnani? Again, to quote Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, a true sage or a jnani with equal eye sees all beings in him and himself in all beings. Thank you.